Hey, good morning, and welcome to episode 69 of Talking to Artists. So today, very excited to reconnect with Michael Wills, who I met in Paris doing an art salon, which was super cool. Just a couple things, housekeeping items coming up. We've got, of course, as you've been following my Instagram, you know how excited I am to be doing our show with my sister, My Family Garden, Converging Harmonies. So Helen has been here from Vancouver Island for a couple of weeks now, and we've been really trying to work hard to kind of create these pieces that are supposed to be going together, which is a very interesting and very difficult challenge. Sometimes I find I'm forced to work with a color palette that's slightly different than I usually do. Her shapes and lines are quite different from mine, and she almost always works in these long, thin, vertical formats, which I don't. So it's been a really fabulous challenge, and I'm hoping that you guys can come. The opening is Wednesday, September the 15th from, I think, 6 to 8 at Leslie Grove Gallery. And this weekend coming up, I'm going to be in Cabbagetown, so hope to see you there too. And there's lots of stuff going on. But anyway, I'm going to bring on Michael and see if he's around, see if he's joined us yet, and see if I can invite him. And I don't see him yet, so we'll just give him a bit of time. Hey, Marissa. Yeah, so it's so funny. So as it sometimes works out, you know, you had travel halfway across the world to meet somebody who you realize was actually in your backyard all the time. And with this particular one, we were in Paris doing Art Capital, which was an incredible experience. And actually, we just squeezed that in just before COVID closed everything down. So I'm pretty excited that we had that opportunity. And a lot of people said we were kind of crazy to travel because I'd been sick, and I was so glad that I did because it's kind of fed my soul for a while. So met Michael there and with a whole bunch of other fabulous people, but we had a lot of fun together exploring Paris with my sister Matteo and a whole bunch of other people, Miriam. And then as we started talking, realized that where he actually worked was literally about 6 houses down from where I live in Toronto, right at the same block. So that was pretty wild. So I'm just going to kind of see again and see if he's here. Nope, not yet, but that's fine. We'll meet him, I'm sure. So a couple other things going on. September is super busy. So not only do I have my family garden happening with Helen, and also Cabbagetown. We also have Art Walk in the Square that's happening in 2 weekends. So that's the show up at the Shops at Don Mills, and which of course is a wonderful outdoor mall. It's north of Toronto, which is sometimes kind of nice. You don't have to fight the traffic going right into Toronto. And it's a show that is going to be a really nice, intimate size, about 65 artists in an outdoor mall that's kind of really beautiful and has some really wonderful shopping, great restaurants. So I encourage you to check that out. And after that, I'm doing the North Toronto Studio Tour, which again is at the end of my driveway with my sister Helen, and Angela Lane will be joining me at my place. But that's going to be fun too. I always love to do that show. It's very much in the neighborhood, and I get to reconnect with my neighbors, and that's been especially wonderful, given the fact that through COVID, I've been up here, but also we haven't really been doing a lot of socializing. So a great opportunity to kind of get to meet people. All of those events, of course, are COVID safe. Within anything that's indoors, of course, is masks only, but social distancing and sanitization, all that kind of stuff, which is now so second nature that it's kind of scary. We don't even have to mention it. But so I really encourage you to come out and check them out, and hopefully we can see you guys. Okay, well, hoping that Mike will join us soon. If not, what else am I working on? I'll just talk about my family garden because it's something that's super exciting for me and I'm really passionate about right now. So our pieces are going to be all 60 inches tall, anywhere between 12 to 40 inches wide. So they're actually all framed, and they're going to look like you're in the gallery looking outside the windows into the garden. And so again, this comes from the fact that not only the fact that Helen and I both, of course, love to paint. We come from a family of really creative people, and that's allowed us the opportunity to really explore our creativity and actually make that into a full-time career, as opposed to something that people do as a hobby. So as many of you probably know, my grandmother on my father's side was a professional artist. She showed her work in many places. She did a commission for, I think, one of the big hotels in Montreal, and so she definitely was a professional artist. My mom actually did stained glass and batik, and did sell her batik silk scarves. I remember when I was a kid at one of the local markets. So that was pretty exciting. All right. Oh, Michael just said he's good to go. So in other words, I should be stopping rambling. So Mike, I don't see you. So I don't know if something's going on, or if you can just maybe ask to be invited. Freestyler 100, if he doesn't show up, he can invite me. I might do that. Apparently he's supposed to be here, but I just can't see him on my screen. So Michael, I don't know if I just don't see you or if you need to update your Instagram, or I don't know what the problem is. You know, there's always something. Oh, here you are. Okay. Requested to be in my video. I was running out of things to ramble about. Well, I could ramble forever, but I'm sure you're not interested.
That worked. Hey, does that work?
Hey,
Hey.
yeah, how are you?
Good. How are you, Kate?
Good. I was running out of crap to ramble about, so I'm glad you joined me.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out. Like, I was like, well, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm sitting here waiting, and I was like, I don't think it's working, so I better go figure it out, you know?
Oh, I'm glad you could join me, and it's so great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too.
I was just thinking about, the last time obviously being in Paris. First of all, I think it's hilarious that we meet in Paris and you literally work down the street from where I live in Toronto.
Yeah.
That was just so crazy.
It's pretty small world, right? Like, so nuts.
I know, I love that. But it's also, I think, I'm sure for you as well, kind of the last time really we were able to do any traveling at all for so long. And of course, I always think going to Paris is such a pleasure and a privilege anyway, but it's felt especially precious as it kind of continued to keep me going throughout the next couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of one of those like, guess what? Like, this is the last time you can kind of travel for like 2 years almost. So it was like such a treat just to finally go. 2 days later, everything just shuts down. So
I know, we were kind of right on that curve. And of course, at the time, we didn't have a full appreciation by any stretch of the imagination of how devastating it was going to be. But, it's, I think for me, it was kind of one of those lessons that, you got to live life in the present. Like you got to do things now because you never know what's going to happen in the future, right? And things can change.
It was so cool to see, like, you in Paris and your sister and everyone, we got together, and then like you guys had to go really quickly. So I stayed a bit longer, jumped on a flight to Toronto, saw you at the artist project, and it was literally like the day or two after, it was like, boom, shuts down.
Oh.
And now we're taking everything for granted, granted. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I know. And now so Helen and I are doing this show, My Family Garden, which we're super excited about. But I have to say, it's a little bit disappointing to have a show and have an opening that is only going to have so many, like a limited number of people indoors. And when you kind of just want a big crush of people drinking lots of wine and just having fun.
That's part of the atmosphere of art too, right? Is having
exactly
people. It's not just like three in there and kind of going, oh, hey, So
for sure.
Yeah. It's okay. Such a different world now.
Yeah, so let's talk about you. So obviously, when I met you, you were as an artist, but you kind of did that very unusual transition from professional hockey player to artist. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, as much as I wanted to become a hockey player, and I think the direction for me in the future was more geared towards art. And I grew up playing in a small town just outside of Lindsay called Oakwood, Ontario. So it was very like 900 people, farming community. All you knew was you were just like a bush kid, kind of four-wheeling, playing hockey, stuff like that. So I grew up there, and I started to develop, into a pretty good hockey player and getting noticed, playing for like my hometown Junior C club and Junior A club, and also playing for a World Junior A challenge. So I played for Team Canada East, and was starting to get recognized, got a scholarship down the States, and that's where even my high school teacher was pushing me to be also an artist as well, but he was enjoying the hockey part to see how multiverse I was. So what I wanted to do essentially is, I knew hockey would only give me so much, and I found that after hockey, there needs to be a life. So I needed to have a backup plan. And I don't know why I chose the two hardest professions
I was going to
uh,
say, most people
in
go into
society.
law or
Yeah. I was like, you know what, like maybe a banker, or like, I'll just go
no.
into like real estate. No, I just picked the two hardest things in the world today. So, because it's make it or break it, right? And so it's such a funny thing. I wish learn like going back now, I wish I kind of was like, no, I needed a plan C, just to kind of keep doing those things. And that's where I found like the interior design job, like working close to you and things like
Mhm.
that. So it gives me the ability to keep painting when painting is slow. So, and I'm a hockey instructor as well, so I get to not just play for the love of the game, but also teach it for the next generation.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah, so it's cool. Like it's transitioning from an athletic sport like that's so rough to like this quiet like ambiance of like soul, spirit, finding yourself, art. It's such a different dynamic. So yeah.
Well, it seems actually that you probably, I mean, couldn't have picked two things that are more diametrically opposed, right? Like even in
Hmm.
terms of playing into all the stereotypes of like, the cool jock and the nerdly
Yeah.
artist or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's really funny that you kind of tapped into both sides, and pretty incredible that you had a teacher that recognized that as well
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Thanks.
encouraged you to do art.
Yeah.
But you must,
Sorry. He
no,
was
you
just
go.
like, he was just such an inspiration because he was like a kind of like a small manly man, but like he had this big presence to him, and he was a golfer, but also like a very fine-tuned watercolor artist. And he kind of told me like, you should pursue both. Don't just limit yourself to one, and go for it for both. So I ended up getting a scholarship down the States and pursuing art, and graphic design that way. So most guys would take business classes, communications classes, things like that, because it was easy and all like because of the fact that everyone else did it. And so they would just pass down the tests and pass down the courses and things like that. Where, I
Yeah.
sat in 3 hour classes, uh, just painting. So like my schedule was like go from 8 a.m. of working out to 9 a.m. classes to 12 to 3, have like a little bit of a break just to get changed to go to practice, jump off the ice, maybe grab dinner, and then go paint again till like 12 at night. So like those were my days. And I miss it, just having that like crazy grind.
And
And
so what, and did your teammates kind of, they support you? Did they kind of not understand it? Were they kind of fascinated? What was their reactions?
yeah, I don't think they understood it at first because they were like, oh, okay, like Willsie's an artist. Like that's kind of weird, but we'll just let him be, over in the corner. And but then I think once they came to my BFA exhibition and saw the work that I produced, they were like, oh, okay, like he's good. Like
He's a
he's
real
meant to do,
artist.
yeah, he's meant to do this. He's not just some like guy that doesn't know what he's doing. So I was like, yeah, it's trained in these techniques. So
Yeah.
it's funny to try to bring both worlds together, and I think it's very hard for some people to grasp that, but that's what I'm trying to do is bring arts and athletics together. So,
Yeah,
mhm.
which I think is a great thing to be able to kind of stretch the mind and stretch the body, right? I think it creates a really, and you look at a lot of the Renaissance men, of the
Mhm.
past too. They did have more than one sort of skill. As I find now, we seem to be kind of focused on one career path or one skill set or one thing that we do or we are, which is
Yeah.
sort of limiting, right?
Yeah, and in today's society, it's always like, oh, you've got to do this and pursue that. Well, life doesn't work that way sometimes. You can have multiple things that you're interested in and keep pursuing them, like, at your
Hmm.
own pace. Like, I feel like our
Yeah.
our world today is like, no, you have to take this and grind it and only sleep 4 hours, and you've got to build this empire. And it's like some people don't work like that. Some people need like like tranquility and calmness and balance, and so
Mhm. Well,
yeah,
and a lot of people too, I think, end up doing the right thing that keeps them unhappy for many, many years
yeah,
of working. And when we do this creative adventures that I run with my friend Angela,
mm,
so often there are people that are in non-creative fields,
right,
and I think a lot of it too is that they're like, I've always wanted to be an artist, but of course I
mm,
couldn't, so I'm an accountant, or there's
yeah,
nothing wrong with those professions, but
mm,
it's sad that there's this thought that you can't do both,
absolutely, absolutely, and you need something to uh, obviously pay the bills and find like to pursue art until art takes you to the next level where you can do it on your own, right?
Yeah.
So and some people don't even want that. Some people are like, yeah, I just want to be like a part-time artist here and there and do these outdoor festivals or like these artist guilds and just do it for the love of it and not as a profession as well. So
Yeah, and the therapy. I mean, a lot of people do it almost for,
yes.
they
Yeah.
need to, right?
Therapy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I started too at the age of 60 and being this angry kid sometimes just slapping paint on the on a canvas, So yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
but you must fundamentally be quite a risk taker. I mean, first of all, to pursue two career paths that a lot of sensible people would say you
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing, because so few
Yeah.
people actually make it in the hockey world to their
Hmm.
level of professional.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It was very, I believe, like my parents always taught me, like, like high risk, high reward kind of thing. Like, no one's going to do it but you. And if you follow the crowd, you'll only get as far as the crowd. So I wanted to kind of hone that and kind of go, you know what, like no one's going to do this but me. So I have to make sure I perform at my very best all the time and try to eliminate those distractions where, is it worth going to that certain thing when my time could be focused on something else, right? And
mhm.
so I did it that way, and I believe I've gotten very far in both professions, and still learning about both professions as well. Like I didn't realize like I could be a hockey instructor and teach the next generation, nor did I want to do that until I got into it. I'm like, no, this is pretty cool, because you see a different perspective. And now with art, it's like, yeah, I'm just on the cusp of emerging artist. I wouldn't say I'm like at the top, nor well known, but I'm very
Mhm.
like I'm in the growing stages of like, you're still a caterpillar until you're a butterfly, where you're still
Finding your
grinding.
voice. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I believe you have found your voice because you've branded yourself to a certain style and you've run with it, which is beautiful. And most people enjoy that because they see consistency and also like what you stand for. And I'm still learning my style, trying to figure it out. So I'm still green around the ears,
Well,
So
but I do think it is something, like I've said this often. Like, I know from a marketing point of view how important it is to have a recognizable style,
mhm,
and hopefully it's something that you love enough to continue to explore for many years.
for sure.
But I did kind of fall into it a little bit. Like, it was
Mhm.
only after I stepped back and I said, oh yeah, I seem to have created something that
Yeah,
is kind of mine. So that was kind of
yeah.
funny too, because all the skills and the knowledge in the world can't help you. It's really
Mhm.
just the doing of it and the feeling of when you're kind of at that point, right?
Yeah, how did you come across that style? Like when you were figuring it out, did it just click or did it take like multiple months?
It took a while, because some of it came from, actually a lot of it originally it kind of came from panic, because I had to do this show and my deadline got shortened from 4 months to a month, and I had to do like 30 really large paintings. So I had to just find a different way of working. And so what
Yeah.
ended up happening was, instead of just doing all palette knife work, I just covered the background with a basic color and then painted on top.
Hmm.
Um, and I was doing resin. My sister said you should be doing wood panel because the resin on the canvas is brutal. And so those two things combined, kind of when I started actually doing the stain and the background on the wood, all of a sudden I'm like, I have this real affinity for wood. I love wood grain. I love that whole
Yeah.
piece of it. So
Hmm.
that kind of came through, and then it kind of moved from there. And it's certainly, for me, I feel like the work is more sophisticated now than it was 5 or 6 years ago, even though But I know maybe optically people would say it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like I continue to push it, even though it's kind of, in my mind, they're huge, huge movements, and other people are kind of going, yeah, well, different color palette.
For sure.
You know?
For sure. Yeah. Because it's like you start out and you figure it out and you're like, oh, this is great. And then you practice that, that certain style, and it develops into something like matured, right? And you're like, oh wow, this is so
Yeah.
great. Yeah, that's awesome.
But I'm a bit schizophrenic too, so I kind of work in a
Mhm.
number of collections
Yeah,
still at the same time. But I think for
yeah,
me, it's the palette knife work probably, and I know you work with a palette knife as well. There aren't that many artists outside of Quebec that
yeah.
seem to do that, so that
Hmm.
alone kind of creates a bit of a differentiation, I think.
Right. And where are you showing right now? Like, what's your, like, especially COVID in season?
Yeah.
Like, where are
Uh,
you
the
showing?
gal the galleries have been really good. So I have a
Hmm.
number of galleries in the US, including one in Ogunquit, Maine, which is quite a tourist town, which has done really
Nice,
well for me. I
nice.
actually have a hard time keeping up because I'm
Yeah.
having a hard time getting materials, right? So
Oh,
that's been
yeah,
a bit of a
yeah.
challenge.
Definitely,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's frustrating. When you've
Hmm.
got opportunities out there and you can't grab them because you can't, like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't get a panel.
Hmm.
Um, so that and a gallery in Cincinnati, which has done really well for me. And then Toronto, they really pivoted pretty quickly to be
Okay.
online.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the biggest thing actually was probably a lot of commissions based on all those years of marketing and building
Yeah.
relationships and talking to people and,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
Hmm.
So,
I feel like that's how you start as an artist, is like in your other jobs or job, you find connections or you make connections with people. And then when you become an artist, people are still watching what you do and you're like, oh, okay, this is Kate, the artist. We want to buy from Kate, right? Because it's a personal
yeah.
connection rather than just you walk into a gallery and it's just on the wall, right? I
Oh,
think,
absolutely. And
yeah,
I think too, whether or not you're one of those kind of people that loves people. I love people. I love to
yeah,
know what makes them tick. I love to have
yeah,
conversations with people.
hmm,
Um, Genuinely, I'm interested in people. And so I think that does come through when I do these outdoor shows, which is why I
hmm,
do shows
right,
where I get to meet people.
right,
Yeah. But
yeah,
I had a weird situation too because I was running my own marketing firm when I was really starting to paint.
hmm,
And that I was felt very much torn between that duality of my marketing clients had to feel that that was my full-time passion that I loved. And I did enjoy doing it a lot.
right,
But so actually kept them very separate.
hmm,
So it felt a bit schizophrenic because then every once in a while I'd meet a marketing client at one of my art shows. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just so weird.
yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah.
So
And it's such a fine line because it's you take two things and you try to balance them and go with it. And sometimes it's just like, no, I need to take this one thing that you're truly
yeah,
passionate about and run with it. So I totally understand that, juggling two
yeah.
things at once. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would come in
And
with
so,
like, sorry,
no, you
I
go.
okay, I would come in with like scars on my, like, like eyes or nose or lips or something from like hockey injuries into like art class, and
A
everyone's
nice
like,
gallery.
yeah, they're like, what's going on? Like, I've done like interviews with black eyes. Like, it's so funny. Like, so
I guess you don't have to worry about that so much anymore.
no, no, as long as I don't throw a paintbrush and it comes back on a canvas or something. So that's
It's
about it.
so so how long? So I think you like sort of sounded like hockey was an amazing experience. You got to travel the world, meet a bunch of
Yeah.
new people.
Hmm.
So how did that transition happen that you decided not to do that anymore?
Yeah. It came into play when I was at the tail end of my career, when I, like, finishing up my scholarship and then from Oswego State and then moving into pro and going down to Georgia and playing there from like Boston, New York, and now Georgia. And yeah, my last concussion. So I've had 7 concussions,
Ooh,
and it's been pretty brutal to deal with, very emotionally, with depression, suicide, all those things that you go through. Um, and so, like, I got my last concussion my my last year of pro in Georgia, and I just was like, I can't do this anymore. I feel like it's taking a toll and taxing on my body. I have to find something else. And luckily, I found like a gallery down there, and I was like, hey, like this is a really cool space. Do you mind if we put something together at the end of the year, like an art show? And they're like, yeah, for sure. So I was playing, and then I got my last concussion like a month before playoffs. And so within trying to heal with the concussion and not practicing, I was painting, and I came out with like Macon, Georgia S style of art, and they're like, "Wow, this is great!" And it was a huge turn of events because we got to see the fans of Georgia come out and be part of the art community. And so there was just a mixture of people there and teammates, and it was really cool to
Wow.
see. And that's kind of when I knew. I was like, okay, this is what's happening. I'm transitioning into that. And so like after that, I was like, I'll try to jump to Europe and play there and go and visit some places. Yeah. So I played in Serbia for like a couple games, and it just didn't work out because my concussions were too, like they were multiplied, and I just couldn't keep up. And so I came back and started to work on art back at my parents' place, and jumped to the city because I had a huge gallery showing there, and it just kind of took off. So yeah.
Well, that's a pretty amazing story, and I think it's must be difficult. Well, I know it's difficult because I had the similar thing where you logically know that you need to move on to the next thing, but it's still scary because it's an
Yeah.
unknown, and you've found success in one field, and
Yeah.
to all of a sudden kind of say goodbye to it, even though you know it's the right thing, it's still not an easy thing, right?
Yeah, because the past is so familiar, you kind of go, oh, like that's comfortable, and now you can't go back, right? You got to look to the future and kind of go, this is where
Mhm.
I'm projected to go. And
But it sounds like you've done a really good job of mixing the two, like bringing on
mhm,
sort of the people that followed you as a hockey player and introducing them to the art that you're
mhm,
producing, which I think is
yeah,
wonderful.
thanks. Yeah,
But and talking about your art too, I think it's really interesting that on your website you talk about, the fact that your work is very masculine, and I would
mhm,
agree with that. It's got
yeah,
very strong, bold colors and lines,
mhm,
and so I like the fact that you've kind of almost embraced that masculinity and owned it, especially
yeah,
coming from a field of hockey, which is so very
mhm,
traditionally masculine, right?
right. Yeah,
So did that kind of happen naturally? Is that just that's who you are, or was it
I I
conscious?
think it's a bit of both. Like it's a part of who I am, of like, no, I need to be a certain masculine man and paint that way. But I also feel like it was also developed because of what I've done over the years, right? I used to not play video games, and I got hit like constantly, right? As a kid, and I would love to fight, and I would love to like go out in the woods and chop wood. Like I think just because of those uh, nurture versus nature things, I think it's developed into both because of um, just the way like I see sometimes uh, like a painting where it's hardship, it's masculine, it needs to be dominant, and I think it needs to have a presence, and people resonate with that, and mostly men have bought my art because of the way it's perceived, and I think they like that, right? It's not soft pastel colors and like I would say like a Monet kind of style where it's very light and fluffy. Like some men just don't resonate with that, and I've wanted to
Mhm.
show the other side of that. So yeah.
Well, I think I would imagine too that with a lot of the toxic masculinity and all those kind of phrases being thrown out, there must
Hmm.
be a certain amount of I don't know, comfort really in being able to purchase a piece of art or connect with an artist that is proudly and positively masculine. You know, I mean, I think
Yeah,
we need
yeah,
those positive masculine role models as well. And I'm sure that, you know, talking to men, they feel that need too to be able to celebrate their masculinity.
absolutely. And, you know, we as men, we kind of bottle up our emotions and we let it push down until it comes back up again, and we need to release it some sort. And I hopefully my art can resonate with them, whether it's like stormy ships, you know, you're focused on a battle, and you know within yourself some turmoil that you're dealing with, or something else like a ferocious lion, or a cityscape
Hmm.
that's in the rain, right? You're always kind of like, what, like, I need to get through this, you know. And most men don't know how to deal with that because they feel talking to somebody through therapy or is weak, or just showing who they truly are. And I feel like that's the opposite of masculinity. I think, you know, most men that are masculine need to show that. And
Hmm.
masculinity is actually it's not doing what you want, but it's doing the right thing, you know. So,
Yeah.
and that's treating everyone with respect, not just treating someone so harshly. So,
Yeah. Well, and it's
mhm.
interesting, just as you were saying too, I could sort of maybe see a lot of your work that does seem to be kind of journey based. Like you're like, even if you're looking at the ships, especially where they're kind of in the middle of the battle, but there also seems to be kind of always light at the end, like light
Mhm.
at the end of the tunnel, sort of with the
Yeah,
pieces and with the colors that you use and stuff, which I think is
yeah,
a really nice metaphor for capturing kind of
hmm,
the heat of the battle and doing the right thing, but also
yeah,
the fact that it brings you ultimately to a better end.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's again, much like hockey, as much as I was dealing with the pain of letting it go, because it was pretty much like, I would say, a girlfriend, right? Like you put so much time and effort into it, and then it just like leaves you just like that. Like there's no like trophy at the end. There's no, you know, game seven, you're done, right?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, this is it, done. It's over. And so the grief point and dealing with those emotions, I feel like I had to paint that as well. So I had to go through that in order to
Mhm.
paint it. So,
Well, I guess, and you lose your community too, right? Even though obviously you have friends, I'm sure you're still in
mhm.
touch with.
Yeah,
It's not the same thing as being there every day and working together as a team. And,
yeah,
so you have to
yeah.
find your new community as well, right?
There's actually, it's so different being such a community based like hockey player. You're with the guys 24/7, and now you're kind of like alone painting. It's such a different um,
Yeah.
you know, spectrum, that you need to find those artists that like to talk to, like much like you and Helen and Marissa and Mateo and a whole bunch of other artists that you need to stay in touch with, because it's like you need to bounce off ideas, or even like just to have a chat. Like it's just joke around, and it's so different. So yeah,
Mhm.
we
Well,
gotta stay connected, you know, as artists.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even introverts as artists,
Hmm.
I mean, it's still important to kind of get out of your own shell and your own head for a bit.
Yeah,
And I mean,
yeah.
obviously, it's why I started these interviews because,
Hmm.
you have to really, it's just interesting to talk to people and you have to really be actively listening. You have to have an
Yeah,
active, engaged conversation. And,
for sure.
that's just sort of certainly saved my soul a number of
Yeah,
times over
and
this last few
like
years.
for you, do you have like an artist guild or an artist community that you still talk to, or you're in like a studio space with multiple artists, or is it just you? Yeah.
Well, I am. So I have a
Hmm.
studio, Art Alchemy, in Toronto, where there's normally 6 artists that work
Okay.
together. But because of COVID, we haven't been able to sort of share that space in the same way. So I've sort
Right.
of pulled back and I've been living at the cottage with
Hmm.
my studio here.
Yeah.
But I am still very involved as chair of the Artist Network. So
Nice.
we
Okay.
were
That's
meeting
awesome.
actually at the beginning of COVID, we were meeting weekly because there was so much to do.
Yeah.
So that's been good because you have,
Right.
you know, people you
Yeah.
can kind of chat with.
good. And
Yeah,
does the artist project ever have like community outreach or like artist like network that way, or is it kind of
not that I've sort of seen. No, I
no?
mean I think they have their internal Facebook pages, but I don't think a
Right.
formal. Like
Formal
we
thing.
at the Artist Network, we recognized that artists were feeling very isolated, and so
Yeah.
we just set up formal networking Zoom
Okay.
things where you could
That's
actually break
awesome.
off into smaller groups of 5 or 6 people and
Yeah.
chat about how you're dealing with COVID or
Hmm.
depression or whatever you're feeling. And so it was a very high level topic, but really it was just designed so you could kind of
Right.
just go and talk to people
Okay.
and share, and especially share with somebody who understands the weird lifestyle that
Hmm.
being an artist is. It's not a normal 9 to 5 lifestyle, right?
Yeah. No, like it's really not like even most people are going to bed, and I was like up painting last night till like 2 o'clock in the morning because it was like, well, I can't sleep,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like people
I'm in
just
the
don't get
zone.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like the whole
Yeah.
day I was like doing nothing. I was sitting there like in the studio. I was like, man, like I should really paint, and nothing was coming to me. And then I was about to go to bed, and it was like, oh, 12 o'clock hits. You got to get up now.
Yeah.
It's
I
such a
am
weird,
so like that too.
yeah.
It's
And
it's
it's,
so funny working with my sister because she's more of a morning person. So
mhm,
she gets up, she has a breakfast,
no,
she's in the zone really
yeah,
quickly. And
yeah,
I find I putter and I
yeah,
clean. And so yeah, last night I did the orientation for the Artist Network, so I had to
hmm,
be on the Zoom call at 7.
yeah,
Well, at 5:30, I'm in the
yeah,
zone, right? And I'm like, shit.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's so, it's like a little like switch that goes off in your mind. You're like, oh, I need to go paint now. And you could be in a room full of 20 people having a great
yeah,
conversation, and you're like, no, I gotta go. Like, it's
yeah,
so weird. I wish, like, I wish someone would figure out like how to like turn it on all the time, when you want to. Like, we need some scientists to
yeah.
kind of go, hey, this is how it works.
Well,
So,
I think some of it's around ritual, though. Like I know a lot of artists kind of have
mhm,
those rituals, and as do I, to kind of get yourself in the zone. But I
yeah,
always remember listening to an interview with Stephen King, who obviously
mhm,
was very prolific. And he
mhm,
said, regardless of how he felt, he sat in front of his computer or his typewriter years ago, and he
yeah,
sat there for like 3 hours. He goes, and
yeah,
even if you type nothing,
yeah,
the chances are much higher you're going to type something than if you don't
yeah,
actually go in front of your computer. And so
yeah,
just going to the studio, I think, helps. But
yeah, exactly. Like, I totally agree with that because most days I didn't want to go to the gym, like when you're working for hockey, it was like, but is like, if you show up and you're there, you might do something, like you might,
yeah,
even though you might talk to a bunch of people, you might do those arm curls or whatever you want to do, right?
yeah,
Even though your
chances are
body
pretty
is,
high.
yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
totally agree with getting in the studio, get practicing, even though if it comes out as vomit, most, most of my paintings that I don't show are just vomit, like it's like, this isn't good. I don't want to show this, but it's, it's experimental. It's trying to find that next like paint stroke that you're like, oh, this is cool. Let's go run with that. So,
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
mhm,
And I think the other thing too, I don't know if people really fully understand, is that, being an artist is like being an entrepreneur, and it requires a huge amount of self-discipline. Like there are definitely
mhm,
those days where you don't feel like doing the work and you don't have someone behind you. And the reality is, if I don't go into the studio and paint for a month and a half, like
yeah,
there's no real repercussions except it's going to affect me, right? So it's kind
yeah.
of, you have to sort of get your shit together and make it
Yeah,
happen.
it's not like a boss is telling you to show up here 9 to 5. It's like it's
Yeah,
all on you. It's like
yeah,
you can determine whether how rich or poor you want to be, or successful or happy, right? So,
yeah.
sometimes
So
you
do
do
you
need a
have,
break. Yeah, sorry,
oh,
go ahead.
absolutely. I'm no, I'm thinking that too. In October, I think I'm just going to take some time and
Yeah, good.
just kind of break and maybe
Yeah,
play, or maybe go in the studio, maybe not.
yeah,
It's kind
yeah.
of it's been kind of crazy. We've been up at the cottage for so long, and it's been
Hmm.
amazing. But the work day is still the work day, so you don't
Yeah,
do a lot of those cottage things that you would normally do if you're on vacation. So
that's awesome.
I'd like to do more
Yeah,
kayaking.
yeah, get out there, get in the water before it gets freezing, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
and then,
So do you have like of the things that you paint? I know you do your cityscapes and you do your ships, your
mhm,
I guess seascapes
yeah.
and some women. Do you have something that you is kind of your favorite to paint? It's kind of your
Um,
go-to and
well, I really love abstract, because like you said, that switch comes on and you can just run with that, like being in the zone. And I find that like if I exuberate the craziness out of me or the mass amount of energy that I have and it comes out really well, like that's what I find. But I would say I would say like the cityscapes are always my go-to. And I always come back to them every like 2, 3 years. But I love painting drapery. I think it's so cool to
hmm,
see, um, like you explored in Paris, right? To see the old masters paint drapery.
oh
Um,
yeah.
it's so like fine tuned in the brushstroke, and it's just it's so like it's out of this world. So like that's what I'm into right now is like I want to paint that kind of style and more realism, because I find it might tighten your brushstroke to something else you go into. But I don't know, like cityscapes are always like my go-to, even though I like these different things. But I would
Yeah.
say, yeah, I think it's just the energy part, like the part where you can paint something and it's like bringing something to life. And whether it's like paint strokes or like with yours, it's like, whew, like waves or
Mhm.
just there's some life to it. And that's kind of what I like painting. Yeah. Yeah.
So let me get this straight. So you like to do cityscapes, but then you really
Yeah.
like abstract and
Yeah. Yeah.
realism.
You know what? I'm just all over the map here. Yeah. That's pretty much where, yeah. I think it's just like at the time, if I'm focused on this one thing, then yeah, I like it,
That's the
like
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but then there's a point where it's like, how like people are like, uh, Billy Joel's got like a new album and everyone wants to hear Piano Man. And so it's kind of like that, right? Where I'm on some new track and everyone's like, oh yeah, do you have any of those cityscapes left? It's like, like, they're like, yeah, we really like a
Yeah.
cityscape of yours. And it's like, man, like I'm going this direction. Why are you like, why are you going, why am I going backwards? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's so
Well,
funny, but it
it's a
always,
good thing you still love to do them.
yeah, I do. Yeah. It always brings me back to like some moments of like, oh, this is when I truly became an emerging artist or something like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, we'll have to see you at some of the outdoor shows then.
Yes. You know what? I do have to apply with them. I do because I just feel like I don't have enough content. Like I need to build up like a really good portfolio or resume of like multiple pieces that are cohesive, and then I could apply for a
I do
show.
feel though that you're probably a deadline driven risk taker, so a show will actually gravitate you to actually do
Yes,
that.
yes, yes, I am actually. Yes, yeah. A deadline does actually fit perfectly because it's like, okay, I really gotta hone in. Yeah. And I do
Yeah.
definitely have to apply to some of the shows that, you promote. So,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
So some other cool stuff as I was
Mhm,
digging into your past,
mhm.
that you did an internship with a NASA painter. That
Yeah,
sounds so cool.
yeah. Actually, Don, yeah, Gillespie, he was my internship for in Oswego. So he worked with NASA and all this painting for them, and so he came up to Oswego because that's where he's originally from, and I got to paint with him and learn. Uh, it was called the cloning of Neptune. So he had this painting back in Oswego that was like ripped. It was in a fire like twice, like burnt. It was
Wow.
like torn, and it had all this like dramatic like background because of like the people that bought it. Like they slept around. There was like part of like with other people, and there was like a whole bunch. It could be made out of a movie. Like it's so cool to see because of this painting. And so he created this 9-foot piece, and I got to help him with it, right? So putting it together, the backgrounds, and learning all these techniques from him. So that's where I was like, oh, maybe I can get into this, right? So, and he was a huge help in promoting just an insight of how artists work, right? And because he was such like a much older man than I was, he had the experience of like, you know, this is how your life might turn out because of art, right? So,
oh, cool. Yeah.
And
then you also did the Makeful show, and I think so. Were you there as a representative, as a painter, or representative of Desserts, or how did that happen? I know that's how you met Marissa.
Yeah, I was actually like contracted for Desserts for a year. I had to make like several like pieces out of their paints and paintings and materials. So they would send me stuff, and I would create a YouTube video, and I would show and demonstrate this and whatnot to show on their like Instagram and YouTube and promote their work. And so they'd always send me like cool, fun stuff. And then, so this came along, and it was like, hey, we have this opportunity. Do you want to go to the CN Tower and paint? I was like, yeah, I've never actually been to the CN
Think about
Tower.
that for a second and a half.
Yeah, exactly. So I was kind of like, yeah, I've never actually been up the CN Tower, I don't think, because I was just always in arenas. So I was like, might as well go. And I met some Marissa and a whole bunch of other artists and really cool people up there. And it was like, what a fun environment to be in, right? To paint, you know, out the Toronto skyline. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it looked like it was. I know I watched the show. It was neat because I knew quite a few of the artists that were there, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch artists work. Like I think that's always a fascinating thing to see their process. And
yeah, because I met Andrew. Is it Shukra?
Chetty Sukra, yeah.
Chetty Shukra, yeah. So I can never pronounce his name. So he's such a cool name. Such a cool name. Yeah, he's a really cool guy.
And I think Nadine Prada was also on it too.
Yeah, and who won that show? Like I tried to. Peter Chang.
Peter Chang,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think he was one of the artists that came in as one of the wild cards.
Well, okay.
Yeah, and then kind of came on. Yeah.
So it was such a cool show because I just never got the end of it. But yeah, I was like, wow, this is really cool to kind of like artists compete against artists. I never, you know, in their own.
Well, and way. I'm surprised there aren't more of those shows. There's so many reality shows, and there's so many things like, you know, Blown Away with the glass blowing. I think I'm totally addicted to that show. I absolutely want to do glass blowing. Yeah. I wish there were more of the painting ones. I think it's a kind of a cool.
I think it would be cool. Yeah, because you've got like a chef, you know, like all these chef shows, right? Like you could be like, oh, you know, you've got an hour or two to make a painting, go, you know, and you could be under pressure. So, yeah. So
that'd be fun.
It would be. Would you incorporate glass blowing into your paintings? How it would like move, or would you try
you know,
that?
It's funny because I've been doing stained glass for years. My mom did stained glass, so I always have a real affinity. I love glass. So I've been kind of playing with doing something sort of kinetic, like a kinetic sculpture, something with glass or with painted glass, because a lot of times people see my work and they see kind of glass and that kind of thing. So I don't know, you know, it's one of those things I just, again, need just some time to play. But Helen and I are doing a residency in France, and we're thinking we might actually work together on maybe kinetic sculptures or things that move in the wind or
that's
glass.
Crazy.
I don't know.
How did you get involved in? Yeah, how did you get involved in that? Like,
well, we applied, so it's Chateau Orqueville.
Okay.
And you had to kind of put together a bit of a proposal. And Helen and I
Yeah.
have always wanted to work on a collaborative body of work.
Hmm.
The family garden we couldn't do that because we were into, obviously she's in Vancouver, I'm in Toronto, so
Yeah. Yeah.
the distance didn't work. The pieces were created with a collaborative intent, but didn't both work on the same pieces.
Hmm.
So kind of looking forward to doing that. We'll see
Yeah. Okay. That's
if we can ever
awesome.
get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. You gotta go through the ringer to even get there.
Yeah. I
Um,
know. It'll be a while, I think.
I think so.
So we are almost at the end of our time. So I want to
Mhm.
know what's up next for you. What are you doing next?
I'm kind of working on a couple commissions right now. And then I was hoping to make a body of work and actually apply to several different galleries. It's so hard because my dream is to get into a gallery um, but I feel like maybe that is not my route. I don't know. Like it's so tedious to be like, yeah, like to per like even like send your portfolio in and they kind of go, yeah, your stuff's great, but I think this gallery will be better for you or something. And so
Hmm.
uh, multiple like being declined multiple times is very, very taunting, on your
Yeah.
soul. But I still want to do that, so I'm still trying to make a body of work to actually get into something and fine tune my brushstroke. But I would
Hmm.
love to. Um, I would love to get into the artist project. I would love to get into more Toronto art scene, I would say. I don't think I'm quite there yet, possibly
Hmm.
because of uh, I don't have a theme, and I keep trying to find a theme, and then my ADHD brain or whatever, I just have like this butterfly effect, and I go, oh, maybe I should do something like that, or maybe I should do something like that. I need to stick to something, but
Yeah.
um, kind of like you, I've been applying to it's called Bandito art and Brota art. There's one in Argentina, then there's one in Tuscany. So I've tried to apply for those to go to
Hmm.
artist residencies. And yeah, that's kind of where my direction is right now. But uh, it's so it's so vague right now because of what the world's going to do. Because I don't want to
Yeah.
commit to something and be like, yeah, I'm traveling to Australia, and then it shuts down again. So it's so hard.
Well, and I think there's always caveats. In October, I was supposed to do Supervine Washington as well as Art San
Yeah.
Diego. And of course, they're both postponed, and you kind of just
Hmm.
have to roll with the punches. I do think, though, sometimes with galleries, sometimes it's just timing. It's being in the right place
Yeah.
at the right time.
Yeah.
But I do know they also come out to things like the Artist Project and these outdoor shows to
Yeah.
see the work in real life and to see how you react and
Hmm.
what
Like
kind of
how do you,
person you are. I mean,
yeah. Like how do you apply for shows? Like are you always looking, or is it just like something that comes up like on your feed or something or
well, some of it is, I think, is being part of a community because
hmm.
that often will happen where people are like, "Hey, this looks like a cool show. Maybe you should do
Okay.
it," and
Okay.
it wasn't on your radar.
Hmm.
But Akimbo also they usually do a lot of calls
Cool.
for
Okay.
submissions and
Okay.
stuff. But
Nice.
if it were me, I would join the Artist Network.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
my
I'm
plug.
gonna
You
join
know,
the Artist Network. I'm going to join. I need to get
and
my button gear
I
and join it.
believe I believe actually on September the 15th there is a education session which is about getting into galleries and approaching
Okay.
public
Okay.
galleries, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely need to find different venues instead of grinding with my head. I need to work smarter, and I think definitely
I think
getting
it's
into
about
that.
building your network. I think when you build
Hmm.
your network within the arts community, then
Yeah.
your fingers are tapped into so many more opportunities. And
Yeah.
then you have to figure out which ones are going to work for you. Because I'm always terrible with like, that sounds like fun. That sounds like
Yeah.
fun. That sounds like
Yeah.
fun. And then you
Yeah.
realize you've committed to way too much.
Exactly. Because like you showed me ADC fine art, and I was like, man, this is great.
Yeah.
Like I can't wait to apply. And it was like at the time I was so committed to it, and then I was like, I just don't have the funds right now to do it, and and it's I'm
Well,
still
and
kicking myself. apply to get into blink art and all those things, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there's time. Sometimes it's just the timing. But my
Yeah.
timer just went off, so I actually have to shut
Yeah.
down the minute. So I have
Yeah,
enough
no
time to
worries.
save it.
Yeah.
But I would normally ask my hairy ass goal question, but you've already answered that, so
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
And I wish you luck in
Yeah.
kind of getting into galleries and stuff. And
Thanks, Kate.
it has been fabulous seeing you.
Yeah.
I've really
It's
enjoyed
good. Yeah.
reconnecting.
Absolutely.
So
Can't wait to go back down into a dungeon again and have some jazz nights with you.
that was so cool.
That was the best
really
night ever.
fun.
It was so fun.
It was.
Yeah.
I know. I remember we danced till like 3 a.m. I think Paul and I had to be up at like 7 a.m. to get our plane.
Yeah. Yeah. That
It was fun.
was
It was
such a
worth it.
great night. Yeah. All right. Well,
It was.
good seeing
All right.
you.
Well, thank you so much, and
Yeah.
we'll see you later. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And just for everybody, next week we've got James Fowler, who does super cool map art, and he's also been doing a lot of TikTok. So we'll figure out what he's doing there. And after that, we've got Roz Fermant, who's working on some really cool stuff with holograms and stuff. So anyway, look forward to seeing you. Please, if you can, try and come out to see my family garden, and have a fabulous day. We'll talk to you later.